Welcome to the K20 Center's Zoom Into Your Career video series. These online career expos give students a way to explore many interesting careers and learn about their career options from volunteer professionals. Jessica Schonlau is a licensed social worker for the Center for Children and Families in Norman. She has a bachelor's in child development and a master's of social work. Her main responsibility is providing therapy for families in need.
Good morning. So this is a presentation for what is social work as a career. Who I am, my name is Jessica Schonlau. I currently work with the Center for Children and Families in Norman, where I work with children and families who've had trauma. My history in social work has been I've worked in domestic violence with adult victims and children. I worked with child welfare for several years, working with families who were currently impacted and needed additional supports. And right now I've been a therapist for 6 years. Social work is a field where you can go many, many different directions. I work as a therapist with kids with trauma, but you can, that's right here, clinical social worker, therapist. But there's also many aspects of social work that you can go into. There are politicians that are social workers. There are people that are probation officers, CPS, adoption, people that work on the hospitals or with those with disabilities. There are even some attorneys that are also licensed as social workers. Why should you consider social work? Social work is a career for those. In order to get into social work, you have to want to help others. It is person first, so you take the person where they're at. Oftentimes people that have gotten into social work or go into social work want to help change people, and we can help them, but we can't make them. It is a career where we go into situations trying to be very non-judgmental and helpful. I think of myself a lot of times as a social worker, as a solution finder, and the person can choose whether or not they take that path. We have lots of social workers that are social workers at a bigger level. There's politicians that are social workers. Our President-elect Joe Biden has appointed some social workers to his cabinet. His daughter Ashley Biden is also a social worker, and we have several persons within Senate and Congress that are licensed social workers as well. In Oklahoma, the previous leader of Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse, Terry White, is also a licensed social worker. So you can work from the littlest persons with kids to some of the big world kind of global problems. When I was in school, kind of jumping back a little bit, I was not good at math. There's lots of jokes with social workers that social workers are not very good at math. But I was really good at reading and writing and taking those classes. If social work is a career you want to take, as many classes in school on communication and writing and interpersonal skills as you can take would greatly benefit you. Because you can learn from everyone. Every person I meet in this job, from the littlest little 2-year-olds I have to the biggest 65-year-olds, you learn something. What a typical day looks like in social work varies greatly. Again, depending on where you're working. I currently work about an 8 to 5-ish, and each day is different. Some days have more days where I'm dealing with what is your immediate crisis? How do we get you safe? How do we make sure you have food in your house? How do we get you to school? Because sometimes kids just can't get to school. To things like, how do we help you talk better with your mom? Or what's going on in your family that you'd want to change? Some days are meetings with lots of DHS workers or foster parents, or sometimes even boring staff meetings. But one key to my job is always document. Everything we do, how we help families, we have to document, which goes back to why communication and interpersonal skills are so important. What I like most is that every day there is some light at the end of the tunnel. You have impacted somebody's life, even if that life was me. But some days are just hard. Some days having hard conversations with families, you can't just brush that off your shoulder. You have to have great skills around coping and communicating and support. This isn't a job you can do on your own. Social work is one of the biggest growing careers. It's going to grow 11% in the next 10 years, which is pretty big. I do think that the median salary is pretty decent. I do think in Oklahoma, it's about the same. If you go to some of the bigger states like California or New York, you're probably going to make a little bit more money, but you're also going to have a lot more stress from the social workers I know there. So if social work is growing 11%, but all other careers are only growing 5%, that tells you that there's a big, big need for social workers. What do you need to think about before you be a social worker is who are you as a person? If you can't take another person's perspective, that's something you should work on first. If you are not organized, it's going to be a struggle. How are you at talking to other people? Can you listen to their perspective? Can you understand and communicate when there's conflict as well? Social workers are people that we take people yelling at us a lot. And we have to be the calm force in the room. Am I patient? Again, we can't always yell back if someone's upset at us. Can you work with your teammates to solve problems? Social workers are often a key piece of treatment teams, both at hospital levels, at DHS levels. Even as a therapist, I'm a part of that family's team to solve the problem. And can you dedicate the time? So for social work, you go to school, you have to get a 4-year bachelor's degree to get a bachelor's of social work. If you go from a bachelor's social work, you only have to go 1 more year to get your master's to do clinical work. But if you get a bachelor's degree, say my bachelor's degree is in child development, not social work, I had to go another 2 years for a total of 6 years in college to get my master's degree. And if you have any questions, this is my office phone number and my email. You guys are welcome to email me or call with questions. Thank you all.
Was it difficult to find a job after you got your master's of social work?
It was not difficult at all. I started at DHS, which is an agency that needs social workers. And they are really working hard as a part of their legal system to get more licensed social workers.
You started at DHS, so explain what DHS is.
So DHS is Department of Human Services. I specifically worked in a group of people within that agency that did child welfare. And child welfare helps kids and families who have allegations or someone has said they either hurt their child or they're not taking care of their child in an appropriate or safe manner. So at that agency, my job was to help families that may just have needed resources to feel safe, or in extreme cases, their child had to be removed and placed in foster care.
So after you worked for DHS, tell me how you moved over to the center that you're at now.
So I chose to pursue what's called licensure as a social worker. So I got a social work degree, but in order to be a licensed social worker, I had to have experience working with families. So I moved to an agency that did therapy to allow me more experience in working with deeper trauma.
I know you kind of touched on it. You mentioned how some days you get to impact somebody positively, but without like um, as best you can. What is the most rewarding thing that has ever come about from your job? What is the one thing that anytime you think about it, it makes you smile no matter what?
I think the best part is the happy ending, regardless of what that is. So for some families, that happy ending is they get to go home to mom and dad. For some families, that happy ending was they get to be adopted. For some families, that is we learned how to talk to each other without yelling. And each happy ending is different for each family. So you are just, as a social worker, just kind of the agent of change. You're the person that helps them make the change that they needed to make. One question they might have or that might come up is, social workers are, I say I'm a really good secret keeper because you can't go home and tell your spouse or your friends everything that your kiddo or your adult or whomever you're working with said. And so in working with social work, you have to be a really good secret keeper. You have to know you can't take it home. You can't tell your friends. You can't even know some of these people when you see them at Walmart.
So you mentioned that some days are just really, really hard, and that the number or the percentage for social work is going to grow because we need social workers. So when I look at that do you have a lot of people that leave the career field because it's so hard, or is it just that the need continues to grow?
I think both. I think we have a lot of older population that is not aging out, that is kind of retiring from social work. I think when I was in social work school, there was a joke about the percentage of social workers that left to be realtors. Again, because of interpersonal skills and communicating. But I think the need for social workers is growing because we understand trauma. And right now we're in the midst of kind of a global trauma, and it's impacting children and families in a way that is going to make the need more. The more we understand, the more we can intervene.
What are some things that, because you do deal with a lot of trauma, what are some ways that you personally deal with what you see and do on a daily basis? So how do you take what you see and deal with the trauma that is and deal with that personally?
It is really important to have support for me. Even just before this call, I had to step into my coworker's office just to vent about a session from this morning. I have to have a lot of fun. Playing in the snow, for example, this weekend, or, my house is always messy because there's glitter and pom-poms and pipe cleaners, and you have to find the thing that works for you. For me, it's having fun and making a mess and doing all the things. But it took time to find the coping skill that worked for me.
You mentioned taking like some classes that you did well at in high school, being writing, English, and take classes that have some communication background. Are there any clubs that you can think of that would be good clubs for kids to get involved in, or volunteer opportunities that they can do outside of school to kind of help them get a good understanding or build up those skills?
I think any community service age group. So like in high school, I was in Key Club, and Key Club did lots of volunteer opportunities with little kids and out in the community. But there's lots of communities you can get involved in almost any community. And if there's not, you create one. You could do a teddy bear drive for kids in foster care. You could do a food bank drive. You could do, there doesn't have to be a place. You can be that place. But getting involved in the community and seeing the things is great. If it also depends on, if you're not a kid person, you don't want to work with kids, you're not going to go, volunteer at the Boys and Girls Club. You're going to go, want to work with older people. You can't currently go to the nursing homes to volunteer, but that is definitely something to look at in the future. Any kind of community service club, or I know Honor Society, if you're involved in that, they have some community service hours and opportunities that are great to do. But those are all things to put on your resume to apply for school, and experiences you can build on even if you don't actually have a job.
When you interviewed for your current position, what were some skills that your employer looked for you to have?
Responsible, organized, ability to communicate under pressure was really important. Accountability. I think those were it.